Origins of Jack Monroe. A former sidekick to Captain America, Jack Monroe abandoned his mentor when he became disillusioned with the hero's lack of finite action against the supervillains they fought. He later became the notorious serial killer known as Scourge. Jack Monroe was born in Iowa and had a largely traumatic upbringing that he mostly had repressed. He was son to parents who were post-war Nazi sympathizers. He and his sister were routinely beat by their father, who hoped the beatings would stop his children from sharing with anyone the contents of their home's basement. Jack, not realizing the nature of what his father kept in the basement, took some of the Nazi memorabilia and other war paraphernalia to school for show and tell. He was later approached by the FBI, which led to his parents being arrested on the grounds of being traitors. Jack and his sister received a lot of hatred around town for their parents' actions, which also uncovered several other Nazi sympathizers living in the town, but what scarred Jack the most was witnessing both his parents executed on the electric chair before his eyes. Jack was relocated to a foster home in Connecticut, and as he grew older, he began to idolize Captain America and Bucky for their efforts against the Nazis in the war. While at school, he met a Captain America-obsessed teacher, who legally changed his name to Stephen Rogers and had plastic surgery to resemble the real Captain America, and the two formed a close friendship based on their shared admiration of Captain America. When a communist Red Skull surfaced, the two decided to inject themselves with an untested super soldier serum that Stephen had discovered years earlier. Stephen became the new Captain America, and Jack Monroe became his Bucky. The two fought for freedom against communists and enemies to the U.S. such as Electro. Unfortunately, since the duo had been given a new and untested version of the serum, there were some side effects. The serum had affected their sanity, and they became violent and unstable. The duo began seeing anyone slightly different as possible threats to America and would regularly attack people of different ethnicities and nationalities. At times, the duo would question their own actions, not entirely sure what they were doing, and were soon apprehended and placed in suspended animation in the hopes of one day finding a cure for their condition. Decades later, it was revealed Monroe was only shot with blanks and the government agency SHIELD had been able to re-establish Jack's sanity. Monroe, with nowhere else to go, shows up on the real Steve Rogers' doorstep. After some initial unease at the possibility of it being some sort of a ruse, Steve and then-girlfriend Bernie accept Jack into their life and allow him to stay with them. Jack acts as the real Captain America's Bucky for a while, but eventually takes on the identity of Nomad, a guise Captain America himself once used, afraid that he cannot live up to the original Bucky's legacy. Captain America and Nomad act as partners for quite a while, fighting intense battles against such foes as Baron Zemo and the Red Skull. However, Nomad was often prone to mistakes, clumsiness and rashness. His dated viewpoint also proved troublesome when he first re-encounters the Falcon and later meets the pacifist, or the wimp, Dave Cox. Nomad is often seen suffering from confidence problems and feels he doesn't deserve to be Captain America's partner and constantly tries to prove himself to his mentor. More than enough times he is too headstrong and winds up easily brought down in a fight. With Captain America regularly being called away on Avengers business, Nomad was left to act solo. He was fraught with often being mistaken for Captain America and demanding little respect from his opponents. After a while, Jack began to feel confident in himself and managed to get a job as a bag boy at a supermarket, where he also developed a crush on a girl. When a villain called Madcap attacked the city, sending people into crazy spins, Jack ditched his job to fight against Madcap. After a long fight, Nomad eventually succumbed to Madcap's power and begins to have a crazy outbreak of his own. In the process, he sees his own reflection as Captain America's. When Nomad comes to, he returns to his job and is fired for sneaking out of work, discovers the girl he likes has a boyfriend, and once again accepts he has failed to beat Madcap. After all these failures, Jack decides to pack his bags and leave, but not before beating Madcap first. Nomad shows up at Madcap's hideout and talks with Madcap and begins to understand Madcap's plight and appears to side with him, but this is partly all a ruse on Nomad's behalf. Later the two do battle, witnessed by Captain America, and Nomad finally defeats Madcap. Upon doing so, He speaks to Steve about how he's sick of living in Captain America's shadow, and the last few days have proven to him he can be his own man. Nomad with the CSA. Years later, Jack returned to assist Steve, who was now acting as the captain after the Commission on Superhuman Activities had relinquished his right to be Captain America. During the time spent together, Jack began to feel disillusioned with Steve's lack of action and attitude towards criminals and soon abandoned Steve and his gang angrily. Nomad continued to fight crime on his own, dealing with the more mundane and important issues Captain America wouldn't, such as drugs and street crime. He redesigned his costume, as well as taking care of a child he took to calling Bucky, and literally became a nomad, traveling the country, fighting against evil. He quickly found a nemesis in the shape of the crime lord Umberto Cefilios, who was responsible for, among many criminal activities, killing several girls. As Jack tried his hardest to get to Cefilios, he unraveled more layers of what seemed to be DEA corruption. Soon, when this led him to become involved in trying to thwart a government arms deal, he became the target of the commission, who were skeptical about his sanity. Andrea Sturman was assigned to research Jack's history to deduce whether or not he was a threat, and began to develop feelings of sympathy for him, which led her to frequently go against her employers and side with Jack. Captain America also began to take notice of Jack's new attitude and disapproved of the way he was handling things, and was particularly unhappy about him now carrying guns. The two later came to serious blows when the commission wished Jack to be apprehended for his interference in government operations. Jack was soon held prisoner by American and Russian government operatives, in league with Cefilios, who intended to use Jack as a scapegoat and potentially kill him. After Captain America was convinced by Sturman that Jack was being used as a scapegoat, the two briefly reconciled to fight for Jack's freedom. The escape attempt climaxed with Jack executing Cefilios as well as shooting practically everyone else present. After doing so, Jack realizes soon after this wasn't the way to fix things, and he begged Captain America to let him leave with Bucky and give them both a chance. Captain America grants his friend his wish and allows the two to leave, hoping that they can both find their way. Jack remained a target for both the Commission and S.H.I.E.L.D., who assigned a task force consisting of Andrea Sturman, Jack Norris, and U.S. Agent to apprehend Jack. The team succeeded, and Jack was offered to have his criminal record expunged in exchange for him murdering the Slug. Jack went to Vegas to get the Slug, where he crossed paths with Daredevil and the Punisher and came into the line of fire of several mob bosses such as Tombstone, Hammerhead, and The Hand, among others. On top of everything, Bushwhacker kidnaps Bucky, believing her to his sister-in-law's daughter, and Deadpool crosses paths with Jack while trying to assassinate Bushwhacker's sister-in-law's ex-husband. After several adventures alongside baby Bucky, Giscard Epure set in action a plan to reunite Bucky with her mother, who he had tortured to help her clean up her act and had taught her how to fight. After her mother kidnapped her back, Jack tracked the two down, and seeing the mother was now clean and trying to get her life back on track, tearfully parted ways with his adopted daughter. Jack turned to alcohol following the breakup between him and his daughter, and one night, in a drunken stupor, wound up being captured by Dr. Faustus, who psychologically manipulated him into following in his father's footsteps and becoming a Nazi. Jack shaved off his hair and went about with a team of like-minded skinheads, until Captain America showed up and helped Jack snap out of it. At the behest of his former partner, Jack allowed Faustus to live and turned him over to the authorities, where he was sent to jail. Powers and abilities. Jack Monroe has advanced super soldier strength to a similar standard as Captain America. Jack, however, isn't entirely aware of the extent of his strength and on occasion has almost killed people by not properly restricting himself in a fight. As well as his strength as Nomad, Jack carries 2 stun discs, which he uses as projectiles. Jack himself has derided these, and while battling Machete and Zoran lost one of them for a day. His jacket and cape are also bulletproof. As well as his strength, Jack Monroe has displayed skills in infiltrating his enemies' hideouts by developing undercover personalities or feigning alliance. Despite these abilities, Jack prefers not to think too much and instead just hit things.